I'm going to welcome Rohita on to host our next panel. Our next panel is actually a worksheet session, so you're going to have a lot of notes that you can take. And Rohita, I want to introduce Rohita. She is, we call her our branding and strategy partner, but she is so much more. She has been responsible for so much of the design language that you see and pulling the event off in the incredible way that it's come together. So can we have a huge round of applause for Rohita, please?
Hi everybody, thank you Anisha and Anusha. I think the Food Not Festival is always going to be special because this is my first project post-maternity sabbatical and it's something that anchored me and I've had so much fun crafting this with the power teams at Edible and Goya. I'm Rohita Madhapa. I run a firm called Two Tigers and Co. Where I launch scale brands. I've been in the business of branding for over 15 years, working with brands like OnePlus, Diageo, Lifestyle, and I actually just love doing this. Over the last couple of years, I've been specializing in creating brand IPs, and that's why I think we had a great time just working on this. Great clients, by the way, never once asked for their logos to be bigger, and just let all my mad ideas come to life. There's a fry deck downstairs. There's like a whole bunch of things. Of course, I didn't do it alone. Anusha cracked the hashtag, which is Food Nerds Unite. So please use that everywhere. We've just absolutely had a blast. For today's session, this is how we've structured it. I'm going to invite Smrithi, and she's going to be taking a toolkit workshop for about 20 minutes. And then I have some exciting panelists who are going to come up and we're going to do a quick, fun question and answer round. So Smrithi is an experienced growth marketer. I've had the pleasure of working with her. And she's just amazing in the way that she finds innovative ways to scale brands. She's currently at a finance startup, and what she's doing there is growth marketing. So what does that mean? Growth marketing just really means bringing potential customers through your doors. And I think that is so important for all of us here to learn today. She's also had extensive experience, working with brands like Myntra and Space Joy. I've seen her deal with like millions of creatives and millions of, ads and taking them live on a single day just so that, the big, what is the Myntra day called? I forget.
End of reason.
End of reason sale. I'm sure that all of you guys have know about that. But like she's the woman behind all of that. So over to you, Smrithi.
We all need a hype friend like Rohita. It's very important to hype you up. I hope I don't let that hype down. Okay, to get started with, every time you launch a brand and you think, oh, how do I get my customers in? What am I supposed to do? Oh, is this better?
A little bit louder.
Now?
Wait, maybe use this mic.
Is this better? Okay. Okay, so you started a brand and you need to bring customers in. And in my line of work, I end up talking to a lot of founders who are always like, what are we supposed to do? So there are many, many things that you can do, but you need a jumping off point. So what is that jumping off point? You basically start by stealing like a marketer. So what does that mean? You figure out one particular niche brand, which is very similar to what you're doing. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you're starting a shoe brand today. Don't look at a Nike, don't look at an Adidas and say, oh, that's where I want to be because our customers are very similar. It's true, you'll get there. But what you need to do is find somebody in your lane who started off like you, who has the kind of budgets that you have, and then look at them and say, okay, so what are they doing today? And after that, what you do is you try to appear similar. So when I say appear similar, I don't mean copy them. And what I mean to say is, you look at a whole bunch of things that they're doing and then take inspiration in terms of how do you sort of go about it. So to give you a quick example, if I were to start a jewelry brand today, I'm going to look at Olio, which is one of my favorite brands, also because I feel like the kind of customers that they have will be very similar to maybe the kind of brand that I want to build. And then I'm going to take a look at what are the different things that they're doing? What are the different customer touch points that they have? How are they using social media? What are the different ways in which that they, telling their story or figuring out their messaging? What else do they do to attract customers? How are their customers finding them today? So I'll make a laundry list of all of these things, and then I look at it and be like, so how can I use this in my research and for my brand? And then that essentially becomes my jumping off point. One additional thing that you can do is, I'm sure a lot of competitor brands might not like it, but what you do is you basically steal from your competition. So that's where you get started, that's where you get your first 100 customers from. Do this shamelessly, it's okay to do it, and that's how you basically get your jumping off point. Don't worry about coming across as, oh, do I look like I'm copying? Do I look like I'm doing this? You need a jumping off point. Think about it as a jumping off point, and then from there you obviously have a lot of room to innovate. You have ways to figure out like how else to sort of make this work. So that's essentially how I would get started. So next, now you started, you've got a few people coming in through the door, so that's where your hunt begins. So you have an idea of who you think your customer is, and a few of them have started coming in through the door, and then you're like, okay, so what does this look like, right? So what happens when you present your brand to your ideal customer? So there are three things that can happen. One is you'll say, yes, them, that's exactly the kind of people that I want to go after, and I found them, great. The other thing that will happen is you're like, no, not them. I mean, it's great that they're coming in, but I don't think they're my ideal customer. I don't want them. And a third thing can happen where you're like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know a customer set like this existed, but they're coming in. I didn't know about them. So what do you do about it, right? To give you an example of a similar brand that I know did this, she's actually in the audience. You can maybe pick her brain about this later. So a friend of mine who started this Indian spices brand called Rasa & Co. So what she did was she said, okay, she started the brand and she said, who is my ideal audience, right? So she thought, okay, I'm creating South Indian spices, so which is basically what I make a lot of sambar podi and rasam podi and stuff like that. So who would ideally buy this? It would be, let's say for example, people who've migrated from their homes and want to start creating these recipes at home, or B, it would be let's say somebody like a young professional couple who are South Indian and don't know how to make it, so I'm going to go after them. So great, she started running some ads, she got some people in, and then she figured that while they responded, there was a whole new third set of audience, which are essentially North Indians who wanted to create South Indian food but weren't able to do it, came through the door. So now, the way we spoke about it is you have two options. You can either be like, hey, this is not what I wanted, but so I'm not going to go after them, or you can be like, I didn't know an audience like this existed, so can I work with them? So then if you decide to do that, what you need to do is you have to go back and then take a look at your messaging that you've created, and then once you figured out the messaging that you've created, you say, I've been talking to like a certain audience set in mind, looks like that's changed, so can I go back and re-look at my messaging and look at including this third set of audience who's decided to come in, and can I be inclusive about it? So now there's no right or wrong answer here, right? Like it's all up to you and it's up to the kind of audience you want to invite. If that's what it is, great, go ahead. If that's not what you want, then again you have to come back to the drawing board and then re-look at the kind of audience who's coming in and say, this is not okay, which also means that my messaging is maybe not like on point, so let's figure out how to sort of change it, and then you come back and change it. This is again a very iterative process. This is not something that you can do once and say, you know what, I've done this, seems like something's working. You have to keep on going back to the drawing board and say, you know what, like this is the kind of audience that's coming in, this is the kind of messaging that's working for them. Do I look at this differently? Do I want them? Do I want to change them, and go on? So this is something that you start when you launch a brand, and this is something that you continue for the rest of, for as long as your brand is online or wherever it is. You basically re-look at the whole audience set and say, am I attracting the right customers? What is happening? And that's essentially how you begin with a small set and then sort of like grow that set and scale that set is what you do. So yeah, once you figure the ideal customer, then what you do is, so now, okay, a few people are coming. So what's the secret in sort of making sure that once they come to your brand and once they've sort of like, found the brand in you, how do you create that kind of stickiness, right? So the secret is you have to listen to your customers. So what does that mean? And a lot of you might also say, I don't have that many customers to listen to, right? So where do you listen to them? So it doesn't have to be the customers who are already in through the door. It is also an ideal set that you sort of have in mind and you're thinking, so where do I go find these customers? You look for them online, you look for them offline, and you look at all the places that they're sort of talking about. How are they describing the product? Not necessarily your product, but the product that you're selling. So how are they talking about it? What is the exact things that they're putting on Google to find you? And if they were to find you somehow, how are they coming in to actually be able to find you like that? What are the questions that they're asking? Where are they searching when they're trying to find a product like you? And in technical terms, it just means like you're doing your keyword research, right? But let's not get too technical. Let's be a little easy about how we go about this. It's just being very curious to say, hey, what are these guys doing today? How are they talking about this? And then what you do is you'll find a whole bunch of these answers. You take all of these answers and put it in a Google Sheet and say, this is essentially what they're doing. And why is this important? This becomes very important because you might describe your product in a certain way and you want to be innovative and you think, hey, this is how I'm sort of describing it. But that's not how the guys who are trying to find the product that you have are sort of describing it. So it's essential to find that middle ground to say, what are they looking for? And am I presenting my brand in a way that it presents itself every time somebody is looking for a product like this? A simple example of, I had just moved out of Myntra and I had started with like a very, very brand new startup. Their entire marketing budget was what I had spent in a day on, one of the campaigns in Myntra. So they said, this is all the money we have. We have 0 customers, now bring in customers. I'm like, what do you mean you have 0 customers? I'm not used to it. I'm used to like having a whole bunch of, people who've already come in through the door. And now you have little money, so what do you do about this, right? So it was an interior design brand, so a lot of people were looking like to do up their homes. So where do you find these people? So what I did was just started like looking for them and looking for the pain points that they were trying to find answers for online. And weirdly, I found a Reddit group of about 30,000 people who was just sitting there being like, hey, I need a new sofa. Where should I go buy, which is a good brand? Or they're like, I'm trying to redo my entire house. I have these things. Will the others work? And then it was like a really nice group which was sort of coming back to the point and saying, oh, do this, don't do this. So then we thought, okay, let's find a way to present our brand here because we're trying to listen to what they want and our brand has a solution for this. But I don't want to do it in a way where I'm like, hey, buy from us, right? Like nobody likes it. So we just sat there for like about a week in that group and answered every single question, but gave them some, additional points saying the reason you have to listen to me is because, we are professionals and we've done this and that's why you're presenting an answer. I don't expect you to buy anything from me. Weirdly, like we got about 150 people within a month from that group who said, hey, I don't want to take up this headache. You guys are offering a service. Great, just, do this. So we got a first set of 150 customers from there. And 3 years since then, we still find a steady set of customers coming from that Reddit group, absolutely free, no ad money spent, nothing at all. It became a very sustainable, set of audience that was growing from that particular channel. Why? Because we listened to what these guys were asking and we presented a solution in a way that felt more genuine, in a way that felt like, oh, they are kind of answering the questions that we sort of wanted. So that's what you do. So then after you figure out like, okay, now you've listened to them and they're telling you a whole bunch of things. So what do you do once you've listened to them, right? Let them write your marketing copy, let them give you the answers that you sort of want to figure out. So now how do you do this? You basically want to write the kind of copy that you write. And why is this important? I'll get to it in the second bit. Is again, so let's say for example, you're a plumber who's looking for a bunch of people to like, use your services. Now if you say, hey, I'm a plumber, I'll do this for you, or I have XYZ options for you. You're like, okay, fine, I remember this person if I want to come back. But instead, so if you take this example, somebody says, I'm struggling with installing a new dishwasher, any slots this week to come hook it up? I tried, but I plugged the place. So they're giving you a lot of signals here. You can essentially take these signals and convert it into a kind of copy that basically resonates with your audience, where you're like, I'm struggling with installing a new dishwasher. How would a brand read it? Saying, don't struggle with installing a new dishwasher, I'm here. So every time you're thinking about this particular pain point, you're not thinking, I need to call a plumber. You're thinking, how do I find a guy who will help me install my dishwasher, right? We all don't know what plumbers are sort of capable of doing. But instead, if you find all of these pain points and then start answering these things in different touch points, this could be a website, this could be a flyer, this could be, any kind of like ad copy messaging, this could be just like, simple things on the menu that you put out. It could be any of those things. But if you essentially take that pain point and then convert it and say, this is how I would treat, to help you solve this problem, that's when they remember you, that's when they come back because they're thinking of a problem and you're offering a solution. So instead of writing a catch-all copy anywhere where it says, oh, this is what I do, think about like what your customers are looking for and just ask them. A lot of the times what happens is, where do you find this kind of, copy to sort of go after, right? People go through your DMs, go through the emails that people send you, just look at the kind of questions people are asking you, specifically as a brand, take all of that, put it in a massive Excel sheet, and then now there's AI, so you can just take that and put it into AI and say, hey, how do I write this? It'll help you. But even otherwise, they've given you enough signals, enough words to be able to take that and then convert it into the kind of copy. Otherwise, let's say if you were to explain your brand, you always end up going back to certain words that's, that comes naturally to you or something that you use to describe. But if you go and ask your customers or people who would use a brand like yours, 80% of the time, the way they describe your product, the way they describe the stuff that you sell is very different. And that's what will help you stand out in a very saturated market in terms of what you do. Otherwise, what you do, what somebody else does, it's very difficult, right? Like, why will I choose brand A or plumber A versus plumber B? Now I know why I'll choose plumber B, because he's going to help me with my dishwasher, versus somebody else who said, oh, I'm just a plumber. So that's how you sort of differentiate yourself in terms of what's going on. So, let's say growing my Instagram, and that's going to become my primary point of sale. So all the resources that you have, which is limited at the moment, take that and put it into just that one channel and say, identify these other channels and say, I'm going to use this channel as a way to sort of just keep on doing my hygiene, nothing more than hygiene, just I'll do the basics. But essentially what I'm going to do is pick one particular channel and then just scale it. And then I'll use the model that I've used to scale this channel to take that and then use the same playbook that you've created and the same frameworks that you've created with all of these other channels. So that's essentially like how you would be able to like do this in a sustainable manner and in a way that sort of scales. So to summarize, it's essentially 5 steps to get your first set of 1,000 customers. You've created a playbook using this. Now take this playbook and then just basically sort of, go all out there and then replicate the playbook for a different set. So you've done something for 0 to 100, then you do something from 100 to 1,000, then you do something from 1,000 to a lakh. But the playbook of how you sort of go about this kind of remains the same. Of course, there are exceptions. Somebody will come and say, oh, I have a lot of contacts in the industry, so I'm going to get a whole bunch of influencers to like go and post about it, and that's going to bring a whole bunch of people through the door. Great, if that works for you, please go ahead and do it. But this is not something that, the rest of the 99 can follow, right? That's not the same playbook that they can play with. If you have an advantage, definitely use it, but also try to figure out like, what is a more sustainable and fashion in which you can sort of scale, because your influencer friends are not going to come and do this for you month on month, whereas you need your customers to sort of come into the door month on month. So use your advantage, but also find a way to sort of just scale in a more sustainable fashion. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Smrithi. I'm sure a lot of you got a lot of insights from this. If you have any questions, we're just going to do a quick Q&A with Smrithi. Can we have a... Is it the mic?
This idea of value proposition, right? So for you to be able to attain that 1,000 customers, a lot revolves around value proposition, because there are 10 players providing the same service, providing the same product. So how do you actually enhance value proposition, or continuously enhancing the value proposition that you're providing to a customer? Because after a point in time, the product or the service that you're providing is going to get moved, right? So how do you keep on enhancing the value proposition?
So I draw a lot of my ideas from first principles, right? So again, the thing is, to give you an example, what you said is absolutely right. Like when you get into a crowded bus, you're not going to just go and sit on someone's lap. You're going to try and figure out like, hey, is that seat empty? Can I take that seat? And then you take your time, look around, and then you go and find that seat, right? So it's a similar thing that you do when you're trying to build something, where initially you're like, hey, this is a value prop. Now you don't know if that's going to work or if somebody else is using it. So you go out there and test it. And a bunch of people will come back and give you some signals. They will not tell you direct feedback, but you'll get some signals saying it's working, it's not working. People are sort of like, resonating with this, and then you use it and it works for a bit. Then it stops working because 10 other players have come into the picture, right? So then you take a step back and then figure out like, how am I doing this differently? And you don't have to do everything differently, by the way. But the only thing that you could do differently is how you present yourself. So again, it's about going back to your customers and ask them, how am I adding value to you? And they will tell you how you're adding value to them. Go back and use that to put it in your value prop, which is not, I can guarantee you, which is not what a lot of brands do today, because it's time consuming, it takes work, and most people that I talk to are like, give me a quick hack. There is no silver bullet, there is no quick hack. You have to go back and continuously sort of, do this over and over again. It requires a lot of consistency in doing this, you'll do this for the first year and then you'll be like, I think I have this figure, I'm going to stop. No, you have to constantly go back to your customers and listen to how are they describing your product, how are they saying you're adding value. That essentially becomes the way you differentiate yourself and differentiate the value prop that you offer. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.